Welcome into the Baptist Health Studios for another edition of Dolphins HQ Extra, as we're breaking down the scenarios for the Dolphins to find their way into the playoffs for a third consecutive year. What has to happen? Dolphins beat the Jets on Sunday, the Chiefs beat the Broncos, and that's all it takes to get a 19th week for the Miami Dolphins. And to help us sort all of this out, he joins us on the Drive Time podcast each week during the NFL season, and now he's here with us on Dolphins HQ Extra. Kyle Krabs. Kyle, the Dolphins are in position to win and get a little bit of help to punch their ticket back to the postseason for a third consecutive year. And no matter what happens in Denver, a win would mark the fifth consecutive winning season for the Miami Dolphins. Kyle, before we get into the game, what does finishing 7-2 after a 2-6 start prove for this football team, regardless of whether or not it's enough to get back into the dance?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pride that can be found in that. And I know everybody is very eager for this franchise to kind of take the next step that everybody feels like they're very capable of doing. But to be able to weather the storm through something like that and come out the other side and still be able to win more games than you've lost, I that's not nothing. And that's something that I think the Dolphins of kind of that stretch between Coach Shula and Coach Johnson and the early years of Dave Wannstedt until kind of recent history, it has still been a missing piece of what the annual expectation is for the Dolphins. And for them to find a way, if they're able to finish this, come all the way back, have a winning season, I think there's a lot of pride to be found in that, regardless of what happens in Denver.
Something to build off going into 2025. And again, if they do go 9-8 and don't make the playoffs, that's a record where you can look back at several games and be like, there's one play in multiple games that if it just goes the other way, you probably are dancing in January once again. Let's go ahead and get into this game, though, and we'll do it twofold here, Kyle, for Dolphins and Jets. Let's preview it from the perspective that you will have Tua Tagovailoa and that it will be Snoop Huntley starting at quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Let's go ahead and start with Tua. What do you think of this game if Tua's back for the Dolphins against the Jets on Sunday?
If Tua plays, I know he was pretty. Mike McDaniel was pretty optimistic earlier in the week about Jalen Waddle and his availability as well, and getting the full bevy of complements of weapons back. I think you would expect to see an efficient passing offense. I think maybe that gives you a little bit more room to have a counterpunch with the run game. I think when we're getting into Snoop and we talk about what the offense looked like against Cleveland, they played the line of scrimmage a little bit tighter than I think the Dolphins have seen a lot of the season, where I think that's maybe the biggest difference will not be the execution of Miami's offense, and stylistically too, with how in rhythm he is and how quickly he sees things. Obviously sets up a lot of plays to be successful right off the jump. But I think maybe that gives you a little bit more room to be a little bit more balanced and be able to run the ball a little bit more effectively, where a team like the Browns, they got up and took their chances with some one-on-ones on the outside, and Snoop was really opportunistic with those. But it changed structurally what you saw defensively, and I think that kind of dictated how you had to call the game.
I thought Tyreek probably saw a lot of those coverages and was happy to see what he got in that game for the first time all year, getting plenty of one guy to beat type of looks where he's got outside leverage and just run an in breaker with no safety help. He must have felt pretty free in that game, getting all that access that he got, and some pretty clear defined throws there for Snoop Huntley. So when we played the Jets last time, I was pretty convinced they were going to play this press coverage and try to reroute the line of scrimmage, but they played off, and Tua kind of went to work playing the short underneath game and was very efficient in that game and had a big fourth quarter and overtime to get us back in that game. Do you think the Jets will play it similarly, depending on who the quarterback is, with how they do their coverage this week?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's more based off the passer, where if you get Tua Tagovailoa, I would expect maybe they do take their chances with their corner and play some more man coverage. Whereas if you get Snoop with his ability to use his legs, maybe you play more zone. And maybe it's, I think that's the interesting dynamic for the Jets to have to decide how they want to play this game. Because as you alluded to, when the Browns, suddenly you get a chance to play one-on-one outside the numbers, and Tyreek Hill, it's not a coincidence he goes 9 for 9 on targets and receptions. So I think there's a game that the Jets are going to have to decide how they want to play it defensively based off of who they get, and if it gives them the best chance to win, and are you gonna, if the timing's not quite as crisp, if it's Tyler Huntley versus Tua, just because that's Tua's superpower and what he does as a player, Do you play more zone and give yourself maybe a chance to break on some more footballs as compared to if it's Tua, you want to disrupt the timing by playing man and then try to get home with the pass rush?
Yeah, I was so encouraged by what we saw in the game on Sunday for multiple reasons, but like you just talked about, it could open up the way defenses play you. And I'm curious what you learned from that game to possibly inform you for your game plan if it is in fact Snoop on Sunday. But also kind of a follow up to that before I even have you answer that question, Kyle, is what did Snoop prove to you, not just about his Week 18 availability and production ability, but about a long term possible solution at the backup quarterback position?
My expectations were for Snoop Huntley because I scouted him coming out of college, so I knew what kind of player he was, and obviously he had modest success and good success as a backup quarterback in Baltimore, and I think it's more of a testament to time on task and familiarity and the depth of this offense. And I think Miami did do some things even when Snoop was out there against Cleveland, where getting up to the line of scrimmage a little bit faster. It looked like they went silent count a few times, and maybe not all of the bells and whistles that I think we were hoping for when we found out we were going to have to play some games without Tua this season. I think you saw some of that. So I think maybe this was as much Snoop pouring into the Dolphins as the Dolphins pouring into Snoop and kind of meeting each other in the middle. And that's what it kind of felt like for me coming out of this performance with how they played against Cleveland.
And Kyle, we're going to do an HQ first here. We're going to preview a game that does not feature your Miami Dolphins. If the Dolphins take care of business, a simultaneous kickoff between the Chiefs and the Broncos would decide Miami's Week 19 fate. First off, just, man, like, you couldn't ask for a better team to need a win from, right? The only problem is they've got the 1 seed locked up, so we'll see who plays for the Chiefs. And there's a lot of noise about what their approach will be in this game, and it doesn't sound great from a Dolphins perspective, but I also caution the listeners because you only can elevate 2 practice squad players per game. You dress 48 guys on game day, so it's not like they're going to be calling up their local UPS and saying, hey, can you get some drivers down here to play Mike linebacker for us? These are going to be NFL players out there playing against the Denver Broncos. Am I crazy for thinking this is not a slam dunk win for a Broncos team off of 2 straight losses?
No, I don't think so. And I think Kansas City's going to get a chance to get some young guys in. Patrick Mahomes wouldn't expect to see him, wouldn't expect to see Travis Kelce, wouldn't expect to see Chris Jones. But the rest of this group, like if you told me that the offensive line at least started the game, I wouldn't be surprised. They can run the ball. Carson Wentz is an experienced player. I know they've got a young quarterback on the practice squad in Chris Olakun, who sounds like he may be in play to get some playing time as well. But if you told me that Carson Wentz played well with Andy Reid calling plays, it would not surprise me. And Denver's got a lot of pressure on them, having lost the last 2. They have an extensive postseason drought of their own. Every year, things you don't expect happen. Case in point, just last week with the Giants beating the Colts.
Right.
And putting 45 points. And Drew Lock played like the best EPA per dropback game of the last 5 years of any quarterback going against the Colts with a team that had the number 1 pick coming into the game. And, knowing the coaching that Kansas City has, knowing that Denver is a young team with a lot of young players that has the pressure, I think it's going to be very interesting on Sunday. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that the Broncos are going to lose or that the Dolphins are going to win, but the NFL has to be just over the moon with the drama that they're getting down the stretch because it's exactly what they want for Week 18.
That's going to do it for Dolphins HQ Extra with Kyle Krabs, host of the Locked On Dolphins podcast and Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with fellow friend of the show, Joe Marino. Touchdown Miami Substack and the draft lead for the 33rd team at Kyle Krabs on social. Kyle, you have said it all here in the Baptist Hill Studios. Thank you for your time and enjoy what is a glorious week of football, my friend.
You too, Travis.